Welcome to the Savvy Leader Podcast, the place for growth, learning, and inspiration for leaders just like you. I'm your host, Kristen Gallatin, and each week we will dive into the grit, grace, and gratitude it takes to become the savvy leader you were always meant to be. All right, everybody, come on back for another midweek edition of the Savvy Leader Podcast, where we honor the journey. This one is all about how a single phone call can force you, just like it did me, to lead through crisis. Every business owner expects seasons of overwhelm, but nothing prepares you for the moment your entire world shifts because of a single phone call. You're suddenly responsible for keeping your businesses running, supporting your clients, caring for your family, and making decisions you never imagined making, especially on your own. This isn't about just tragedy, though. This is about leadership in crisis and what I learned as a business owner when life demanded every single ounce of discipline, faith, and resilience I had built over a lifetime. The day that everything changed was July 14th, 2022, just a regular old Thursday. And I had spent the morning doing what I do, preparing contracts, communicating with clients, and also putting plans together to host our grandson's first birthday party that very weekend. My husband Eric and I worked together that morning as we often did. We knocked out a few projects, shared lunch, talked through schedules like we always did any other Thursday. We got home early, though, so I could prep the house while he wrapped up his day with two final appointments. The first, a final walkthrough with a painting client, and the second, a meeting with his Freemason Motorcycle Association, which meant that he was going to need to take his motorcycle back down to the city to attend both. He didn't want to go. I know that now. He fought off the same intuition we've all felt. Maybe I should stop for gas, or maybe I should just skip this meeting. I am just not feeling it today. But he's a man of obligation and integrity, so off he went. And not an hour after he left, while I was driving to our daughter's to return her flower pots, my phone rang, and I turned the truck around and hopped in the car. I didn't panic. In fact, I was unnervingly calm, kind of like my body already knew what was happening. And that crash, it happened nearly in the same stretch of highway we had just driven past earlier the same day. And we had watched a helicopter lift someone else from a car wreck. Only this time that helicopter, it was there for my husband. When I arrived at the scene, there was so much chaos. All these officers milling around and directing me here, there. No clear communication, no organization. It was disheartening to see our emergency responders seem so unprepared. They asked me to move my car even, and they just weren't going to allow me past to get to Eric. I kept asking, and they kept shuffling their feet, hemming and hawing. Not until the very last minute, right when he was being loaded onto the chopper, did I get to him. And then he saw me, and he looked all right. They told me he had a broken ankle. That was it. I grabbed his phone, his belongings, saw the totaled bike on the side of the highway, and then it was time for me to switch roles from concerned wife to crisis commander. On the drive to the hospital, I called his client to reschedule. Then I called a member of his motorcycle club to let them know he wouldn't be making it tonight. At that point, I started reviewing his calendar, my calendar, and every single business commitment we had on our plates in the near future. I needed to reprioritize literally everything. And this was the first business lesson of the story. Leading through crisis requires immediate reprioritization. Not everything can matter, but the right things matter more than ever. And I focused on communication, active jobs, clients, deadlines that could not move, and revenue critical work. And then I eliminated as much as I possibly could. Things fell through the cracks during that time, no question. But I was okay with that. I had to give myself permission to be. Nothing, though, can truly prepare you for the experience of walking into a level 5 trauma center on your own. He was in the emergency surgery prep while I stood anxiously in the waiting area for nearly an hour before they finally allowed me back in for a brief visit. He was being prepared for a wound cleaning procedure. The pain meds were doing their job, and we shared a laugh about that. I was glad to see him in one piece, though I would later discover that his condition was far more critical than I was led to believe. That night was so eerily quiet. Following his procedure, they placed him in a room, and I spent the night in, yes, another waiting area, but one that was on the same floor as him. The next morning, after seeing him briefly and learning that he would be in surgery, I was basically dismissed, misdirected, and then ultimately sent home. Can you believe it? It was 1 o'clock in the morning, and after waiting in literally the wrong area for almost 12 hours, I learned Eric had undergone multiple surgeries, and I missed all of the surgeons afterward to have discussions about what had happened and how things went. And due to their strict visiting hours, I was literally forced to leave. I lived 90 minutes away, and after a fitful couple hours of somewhat rest, I returned and waited again until I was let in to see him. When I walked into that room, you guys, I was met with the sight of my husband looking afraid and barely alive. He had lost an enormous amount of blood. After being in surgery for over 12 hours, he lost so much so that he had to be monitored throughout the night just to keep him awake and thus alive. He spent the weekend recuperating from that after 3 or 4 liters of blood. And this experience led me to the second leadership truth. It's up to you. In your business, you're the expert, right? In this crisis, you don't even know what you don't know. And this was what I learned. Don't expect anyone to guide you or even volunteer information. You must ask direct, specific questions and escalate your concerns quickly. To do this, though, most importantly, you've got to find an advocate of your own, someone who is or has gone through what you're going through, someone who's lived it and come out the other side. When things go sideways, calm confidence gets the attention and the fastest results. And then, you guys, there was this weight of it all. At the time, I was a real estate broker 1 year into launching my brokerage, running Great Duck Marketing as a side gig and leading and growing lead network professionals. I was supporting and advising 360 Painting, but now I had to run it entirely on my own. Well, not entirely. We'll get to that. Meanwhile, Eric had undergone 12 surgeries, spent almost 7 weeks in the hospital, and I rarely left his side. But businesses, they don't pause because your life falls apart. That is something you need to know. The business must keep moving. So here's how I kept everything moving forward. Know your priorities, lean on your skills, but delegate the rest. I reviewed every active job, project, and client for revenue impacts, deadlines, expectations, and also emotional bandwidth that would be required for each. This was no time for ego, so I farmed out as much as I possibly could to contractors and peers, my team, and then the systems that we had built. Next, communicate completely, openly, and transparently. The truth, the plan, the best possible timeline, but maybe the worst case scenario too. What it was I was going to need from people, and also what they could expect from me, along with my sincerest gratitude. 99% of people were so gracious. People understand hardship, as long as you keep them informed, though, which means you have to get out in front of that crisis and stay there. Constant updates and progress reports are the only way to keep your clients, customers, and team comfortable while you work through the chaos. Get ahead of it and stay there. Next, it was time to start shedding the things that just no longer fit. All those obligations that you've outgrown or things you've tied yourself to but feel too guilty to let go. Now is the time. And I chose to step back from non-revenue generating commitments. Some volunteer roles that were just no longer filling my cup, and non-essential meetings, tasks, any obligations that simply no longer aligned with my new reality. Not everything gets to stay. People will want to help though, but they're going to need some direction from you. So you've got to create a running list of tasks that you can pass out at the ready. For me, it was things like bringing meals, driving him to PT, visiting on days that I was booked end to end, or picking up grocery and prescription orders. Those were killer. I'll tell you what, those small acts saved me. It gave me valuable time back in my day and rest at night, thus saving my businesses. With that said, I really wish I had carved out 1 or 2 hours a week, whether with a friend or alone, just to breathe. Leadership requires clarity. Clarity requires space, and space requires permission. We ended up closing 360 Painting at the end of that year. The business model no longer aligned with his physical abilities. It was never going to be our legacy, and it simply outgrew our bandwidth. In 23, real estate became my anchor, and I had one of my best years ever. Why? Why do you suppose that was? Well, I had trimmed all the fat. I simplified my world. It was moving forward on its own, and I was focused only on what moved the needle. I showed up for my clients with a stronger sense of purpose, gratitude, and intentionality. I moved forward from that crisis, keeping my new time management standard and priorities intact. I stacked my appointments and kept them to just 2 days a week. I worked virtually when possible, and I only allowed value-driven opportunities my attention. In turn, I was able to respect all my commitments, and my priorities took center stage, making me more present in body and mind for the things that mattered most and had the biggest impact without overextending myself. And people understood. They appreciated my integrity and respected my priorities, absolutely. Final lessons for business owners navigating a crisis. Build systems before you need them. Delegate before you burn out, and communicate early and often. Document as much as you possibly can, because why? Your brain is already full. Ask for help, but be specific. Cut without apology. And give yourself permission to choose what truly matters. Crisis didn't make me a leader. It revealed the leader I already was. And it taught me that strength doesn't look like doing everything. It looks like knowing what to hold on to, what to release, and who to become when life forces you to start over again. This was my breaking point, but it was also the beginning of something new. So stay tuned for that next time. Until then, lead well, my friends. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Savvy Leader Podcast. Be sure to check the description below for any links or resources we mentioned today. And for even more inspiration and tools to help you on your own leadership journey, come on over and join the conversation in the Savvy Leaders Lounge. That's savvyleaderslounge.com, and we'll see you next time.